Hi, everyone. It's been quite a while since we've last seen each other. We're actually finishing off the Gaming Academy with the wonderful Leyla Johnson. So Leyla is the narrative designer at Mohawk Games, as well as the CEO. And she's worked on quite a few successful games with Soren, who we had last week on as well. So Leyla, if you'd like to tell us a bit more about yourself and keep going, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ashraf, and hello, everyone. I will tell you a little bit more about myself. So let me first start sharing my screen because it's all in there. Can you all see my screen? Okay. So I run a game company with my husband and my lead designer, Leyla Johnson. It's called Mohawk Games. And we founded Mohawk Games in 2013. And we made two titles, Off-World Trading Company and Old World. And we are currently prototyping two more projects. I'm Leyla Johnson. I'm originally from Lebanon. I'm the CEO of the company. And for Old World, I was the producer, the narrative lead, and the art director, and the creative director, basically. This is my Twitter. I'm at Leyla Cat J, and the Twitter for Mohawk Games. And we have Twitch, and of course we have Instagram. So you can reach me anywhere. And anytime you have a question, I'd love to help. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my own experience. So I hope I don't come across as self-promotional, but I'm going to heavily base whatever I'm going to share with you on my own experience with pitching Off-World Trading Company and Old World, and I'm currently pitching the next two projects. So if it doesn't apply to you, remember that we make 4X PC strategy historical games, occasionally historical, and some things might not apply to you. I'll try to highlight the points where things might not apply to people, like, for example, who make developers who make mobile games. Alrighty. I'll talk a little bit about phases of development. Let me just remove the bar here because it's blocking my view. There you go. So these are the phases of production for us. They are generally applied in this order, especially the last 5, the pre-production, then followed by production, polishing, shipping, and updates. The first 4 can change, and I'll talk a little bit about each and every one of them. First of all, you're going to start with an idea. You have to define what is a good idea, and then you have to prototype according to your idea. And of course, once you have a prototype, you can pitch the idea. Now, sometimes, and very, very rarely, you can pitch just the idea, and this is basically, and hopefully after many years and a successful career for many of you, the publisher will put their money just based on your idea because you've established yourself, you've established a career, you are renowned for being a creator with multiple shipped products, and they can put their money behind just your idea. They'd rather start from a concept. But most publishers would prefer to see a prototype. Once you have the money, everything comes easy, right? You start in pre-production, you go to production, you go to polishing, shipping, updates. In some cases, you pitch your game in pre-production, and in some cases, you pitch your game during production. It happened to us with Old World, and we'll get to that in a little bit. How to find a good idea. Not promise, this is not a presentation on how to find a husband. In my case, the lead designer happens to be my husband. So how to find a good idea? How do you know that it is a good idea? Well, you don't. You have to trust your instincts and do your research. So in our case, it's a little easier because finding a good idea is heavily attached to Soren Johnson. And Soren Johnson in the picture here knows what he's doing. He made 4X games before with Civilization 3 and Civilization 4. So I use Soren in every slide. So I have this portrait for him from Old World because we made portraits for all the team. And I basically sell Soren when I am pitching because he's an easy sell. So this is what I say, for example, the creator of Civilization 3, Civilization 4 is now off-world trading companies for, I just attached all of the titles he created. Old World, in this case, I removed Old World, but he's now currently making Old World. That's what I used to say in my pitch, is coming up with this idea, and put your money behind him because he is a very a trustworthy name in the industry. So back to the idea. For us, we are still a studio. We have to trust our lead designer who is creating a good idea. First of all, you have to do your research when you are creating a game. You come up with an idea. How do you know it is good? Well, it resembles a couple of other games in the industry. And these games have proved to have an audience and have proved to play the games that you are thinking of creating. I'll give you a very weird example for those who do not know Off-World Trading Company. When Soren was creating Off-World Trading Company, it was almost an impossible pitch because it's a very niche game. There aren't games like it in the market. So it was a very, very hard sell, and it took years to find a publisher, because even though Soren is trustworthy, he's known. Not a lot of publishers can put their money behind an RTS game that is about an economy. And we made the game, and it proved to be good. So now they can trust us more on making a niche game. Whatever I'm saying now, remember when I said that not everything is applicable to the whole games industry. I cannot imagine ever pitching a game for a free-to-play mobile game. We don't know how to make a mobile game. We especially do not know how to make a free-to-play mobile game, because when we trust our instincts, our motto, our rule is always make sure that the player is having the most fun in our game. So every time we hit something with the game mechanic or just the game design in general, we ask ourselves, well, hold on, who's having more fun here? Are we allowing the AI to make the decision for the player, or we want the player to make the decision? Who will be happier if we make the AI make the decision, or if we make the player make a decision? And it's always, is the player having fun? In free-to-play games, this is not the motto. The motto is in-app purchases. You have to make sure that the consumer is constantly buying things for the game, for the base game. So I don't know how to pitch a mobile game. Finding a good idea might not just be, it's finding a good idea is always applicable, I guess. It's just that it's a whole different field of play. So the aim is different for us a little bit. After you find a good idea, you have to start your research. For us, when I'm going for a pitch, I look for comparables. Research the market, look at other games that are made in the genre, ones that are close in concept to your game. For Old World, these were the comps we drew these numbers from. Like, for example, you see Civilization 5, at that time, we got all of our numbers from Steam Spy. I guess for developers who make mobile games, there's App Annie, for example. So as of 2020, these are the numbers that we used for Old World to compare Old World to. Strategy games, 4X genre. We gave the publisher the numbers. So for example, Civilization 5, we didn't know what they made in the first year, but we know what they made in total sales, and we showed them the comparables. Remember that the publisher won't do your research for you. They will do later if they consider you, but to consider you, you have to do your research. You have to give them these numbers in a slide. Because one, it shows that you know what you're doing, you know the industry, and you are being reasonable. The more you know about games, the more they trust you, right? And this shows that you know more about games. Don't feel intimidated by big names. I wrote this in my notes. Please don't feel intimidated by big names. Do not worry about making a game that feels a little bit like Civilization and putting Civilization up there, right? If you look at the numbers we put up there, they go from 10 million, they range from 10 million all the way to the thousands, hundreds of thousands. So do not worry about putting big names. The publisher has to trust you more than you trust yourself. So even when you are in doubt, even when you are intimidated, even when you are insecure, you feel like you're an imposter. Seriously, I'm putting my name up there with all of these big names. Please do it, because publishers have to trust you to give you the money. And remember, do not put names up there that the publisher might not know. Always go by the fact that the publisher doesn't know the games that you are talking about, regardless of how famous they are. Publishers usually are business people. They are not game developers. They are the people behind the money. So you have to simplify or explain sometimes what these games are, even if you know who they are, even if everyone on your team knows who they are. Remember that the publishers, at the end of the day, are business people. They are not game developers. All right, so you have to in step 2, build a sandbox for prototyping. The next step, for us at least, was to have a programmer build a basic sandbox for the designer to create the prototype. The art is not important at this point. Just grab assets that are available for free. Old World once looked like this. And in the previous slide, I'm just going to go back to that slide for a second. In this previous slide, the game was called 10 crowns at that point. So if you see 10 crowns at any point, remember that Old World used to be called 10 crowns. So the art is not important at this point. Just grab assets that are available for free. Old World once looked like this. And the scout and the city that you see are not even 3D assets. They are just clip art that we found on 2D billboards in the game, but it is enough to try out for the gameplay. Weirdly enough, we were playing full multiplayer games at this stage. So do not be overly picky. Do not start spending your time and money and energy, the team's energy, worrying about how it's going to look like for the publisher. The publisher will care about numbers. They won't severely care about your art, but I will get to art later. But it is very important for you to include where you are going with your art direction. And I'll talk about this shortly. Start building out the UI, and slowly you will start to develop the graphics around the game. And for a 4X, the best thing to invest in is the UI, because a majority of the gameplay is communicated through the UI. So getting things like tooltips to work early on was a priority for us. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick still from COVID, so I apologize if my voice is cracking. So we have an idea, we prototyped it, we have concept art. And we have an idea where we're going. Now we get to pitching. As I said, 10 crowns was the previous name for Old World. We felt good about the gameplay. We felt it was safe to start exposing publishers to our ideas. This is the first slide of our pitch deck, our actual pitch deck. Again, it was called 10 crowns. So the simple elevator pitch for us is right there on the screen, and it's called The Fun of Civilization plus the Drama of Crusader Kings. Expect many things to change. Like you're gonna change maybe your art style. You're going to change how many empires you're gonna start your game with. But one thing hopefully won't change for you, it doesn't change for us, is that we know the heart of the game. We know what the idea around the design, what it is, and that is always solid. So expect many things to change about your design, including the title, but it's important to have a core vision that doesn't change. Indeed, just like our elevator pitch, it's the fun of civilization, but the drama of Crusader Kings. Many of the reviewers of the game, or the reviews that came out for Old World, described the game exactly this way, as a hybrid between Civilization and Crusader Kings. I also have to say that elevator pitch was in for a few years ago. And now some publishers don't care anymore about it as much as they used to, since not many developers can provide them with one. So don't stress if you can't find yours. Remember, publishers aren't game developers. So even sometimes if you tell them it is this game plus the blank of that other game, they might not know what it is. In our case, Civilization is very, very famous, and Crusader Kings is very, very famous. So most publishers knew what we're talking about. But in your elevator pitch, it is important for you, I apologize, and for the publisher, for your pitch, to know where you are borrowing your ideas or you are inspired. What are you inspired by? Remember that most games today are an inspiration from other games. Different elements of your idea are a combination of multiple elements from multiple games. Remember these elements, and you just have to know how to describe them to the publisher. Sometimes some of you might be publishing and have exactly 5 minutes to communicate your idea to a publisher. So it's very good to know how to describe it and also know where you are borrowing from. I hope I'm making sense. So while pitching, as all of you probably know, you are going to continue working on your game, and figuring out the direction of your art is important. It's easy for me to talk about art, and I can talk about art forever since I was the art director for 2D art. But we originally wanted, and we continued with that vision, we wanted to create a romanticized version of the past. And anytime I communicated that to my artists, I told them, especially if they watched the movie 300, Gladiator, Game of Thrones, which, believe it or not, the person who created that painting did not watch any of those. But I included the references I included the references in any email I sent to my artist. He wasn't physically present at the company, so we communicated online and on Slack. So anytime I sent him refs to create the art, I sent him refs from Gladiator, from the movie 300, from the series Game of Thrones. And I told him, I want you to create that feel for me. What I called it was romantic realism. So I was creating a world where things are real, but imagine you're dreaming about them. In your dream, they're bigger, they're more majestic, they're more royal. The colors are bolder, are more pronounced. The palette is strong and bold. So it's almost like a glorified reality. So I called it romantic realism, and I sent it to my artists every single time. I reminded them of that. So this was the concept art. I asked Eric Ehoff to paint this for us so we can create an environment that we can show to the publisher. If you have an in-engine concept at the time you are pitching, wonderful, which is better, of course, it's better. Include it in your slides. And this is how the art style, if you see the other slide, this is concept art. And this is an in-game engine, in-engine concept. So this is how the art style came across inside the engine. We still had a long way to go. And we are now in this phase, a few months into 2017, about a year after the birth of the idea. What were we doing? The team was still working on off-road trading company. So this is the phase where you have just a couple of people, 3 people, a designer, a programmer, and artists working on your pitch deck, on prototyping as well. This is a scene that was created in Unity, prototyping the art outside of a gameplay or design, just to prove to ourselves that we could make the art look closer to the concept art. And that was like the basic target for us. And the publisher needs to visualize how your game will look like, and you'll need to get them there through this type of visuals. So I made up this slide this morning because it is important to know also how your staffing is going to look like. I'll give you a minute just to kind of eyeball this, and I'll talk a little bit in depth about this. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to know what type of team, it's the scope of your project. For us, this is based on old world, plus and minus few, no, definitely plus few developers, because I'm not counting people in the music and sound that we work with. So in year one, we were creating the concept and pitching. And for that, we had a programmer, a designer, and an artist, and myself. And in year two, we went into pre-production, and we had about 10 developers. Year three, that was production. And it was we had 25 to 40 developers. We reached 55 at some point, but it was for a short period of time with animators and music and sound. Just saw someone in front of them outside window. And post-release, it's important for you to also think about post-release when you are pitching. Do you want to factor that in? I'd say yes. If your game is successful, it is important for you to factor that in. Later, the publisher might say, let's keep that out, because if your game is profitable, you can basically take the money out of profit and make that into a payroll. So anything is negotiable, but this is definitely the most negotiable point, the post-release. For us, 15 developers are working on Old World, the DLCs. Once you understand, determine the cost of making your game, determine the timeline, the development time for your game. Of course, you're going to have to think how much you're going to want to pay your developers, and you're going to want to add 30%, because you'll never know what's going to happen. And trust me, things are going to happen. You might have underestimated production in one place or the other, or have to remove a whole asset and replace it. And you've changed design, and now you need more things. Anytime you change design, you're gonna need more of something, time, energy, team, money. So add 30% to whatever number you are pitching. And this is just for miscellaneous. Remember that it is very important you don't crunch. We have an anti-crunch policy at Mohawk Games. And while you think that you can work 90-hour weeks, I did it, but it's very important that your team doesn't do it. They will build resentment, and they will be exhausted. And it is different when it's your idea and you're working for it. It's different when it's your studio and you're working for it. So remember that it is your studio, it is your vision. You are willing to put in the time, but people who work in a team that works for you, with you, alongside you, might get very exhausted by that. They don't see what you see in your head. So remember that. Looking over my notes, just make sure that I covered everything. Make sure you show the publisher that you know what you are doing when you're reflecting these numbers, that you understand how production works, how team works. Regardless, for example, don't reduce the development time again, because that will show crunch. Even if you want to show your publisher that you have a super team, really don't do it, because they'll always think that you're crunching, and most times you are. So I'm gonna be going over the costs anyway. So if I'm forgetting anything, I'll probably be covering it in a different slide. What's happening? Sorry about that. I don't know where my mouse is. Maybe it went out again. In our case, we pitched Old World, and we got the money. When we went to Sweden to pitch to Starbreeze, we told them about 10 crowns. They loved the idea. They gave us the money. Apologies. We pitched to multiple publishers. One of them is Paradox in Sweden. we probably contacted about 20 to 30 different companies. And the one that gave us the best deal was Starbreeze. I'll pause here to discuss what a good deal makes. What we accepted for Off-World is different than what we accepted for Old World by way of Starbreeze. And then by way of Epic, I'll get to what happened to Starbreeze. And then we had to go to pitch again. And we got a deal with Epic Game Store, and we accepted a different deal by way of them. And then we, according to the terms of the deal with Epic, by May of 2021, yeah, maybe 2022. By May 2022, our deal with Epic ran out, our contract ran out. It's great for us, because now we can go with a different publisher if we want them to worry about the marketing. We got our deal with Hooded Horse, and that's when we went on Steam. So I'll talk about all of that later. But for us, the deal kept getting better. And that is because the development phase that we were in was more progressed. So when we pitched the idea to Starbreeze, we were in prototype. We are still in the very early phase. By the time we pitched to the Epic Game Store, we had put money, effort, time into Old World already. And we pitched it to them. It was a more developed game, so we got a better deal. So they cannot take that out of you know, profit and sales. And by the time we went with Hooded Horse, the game was already released, fully launched on Epic Game Store, and we wanted a deal where we don't have to worry about marketing and advertising for the game, and they can worry about costs that we don't have the team for. Worry about efforts that we don't have the team for, and we can just worry about the creative side of things and DLC and supporting the next phase, which is post-production for Old World. Just go. Starbreeze gave us a publishing deal, so did Hooded Horse, but Epic only gave us a distributor deal, so they weren't even publisher for us. They weren't worrying about the marketing aspect of anything. So we needed a publisher at that point when we went to Steam. We had a deal that covered localization, advertising costs with Hooded Horse, everything that I didn't want to worry about while I know that I was going to start prototyping the next two projects with Thorn. Hooded Horse is an indie publisher with whom we have a very decent relationship, and they are transparent with us on how they plan to market our game, how they plan to, what type of money they're putting in advertising. And to me, what I'm learning from my relationship with Starbreeze is how they approach advertising and marketing. So at any point, if I want to publish my game myself, I am taking their knowledge and refining it to what suits us, to what best reflects us, so I can at some point one day do it by myself and hire the team for it. So for me, it's a learning process as well. It's like as if I'm going to I'm taking courses on how to read analytics and advertising numbers on Steam and other platforms, and relationship with GOG and all different stores at the same time. So for me, my relationship with Hooded Horse is great for teaching me things as well. On a side note, traveling to Sweden to pitch to them was amazing. We met wonderful people, wonderful developers from Starbreeze and other Swedish companies. But now that we have the money, we can start spending more money on resources and hiring and developing the game. I also created this morning because this is very important. Once you have the money, you have to figure out production. So what are the tools and why they were very important in our case? Hire a good producer. Well, in the Old World, I was the producer. So it was easy, and that was a very good one. No, but seriously, you have to figure out how you're going to communicate with the team. In our case, because of COVID, we went fully remote. We needed a solid way of communication. So we were using Slack. Discord we use because we were communicating with the community, and it was very important, especially in our case, because we hire a lot of devs from the community. A lot of our designers / programmers come from modding and come from Discord. So for us, while Discord doesn't cost us money directly to Discord, it costs us money differently. Hiring a team that is present on Discord, community managers, etc., will cost you money. Of course, licensing with Perforce, and these are all production tools. You have to decide you want to go with Unreal Engine, Unity. All of these are very much, Unity is very expensive, Adobe, etc. Like, the art department, remember, you can always refine the art more. So you can always spend more. You have to draw a line to what makes you satisfied, because I trust me, you can animate anything you want. So there's always a chance for you to pour money into art. Remember, players are playing the game mostly for the gameplay. Think think a lot about where you're putting your money into, okay? Because it's very important for your success. It's very important to make a beautiful game, and we take so much pride into the art that we have in Old World, and we'll get to that later. But remind yourself of your priorities for your project often. So for us, I'm going to highlight Slack. It was a very important tool for us. Our team was fully remote. We needed to talk to them. It has different channels. If you ever want a recommendation or a description of how we used Slack and how it was important, I'm happy to help you figure out the tools. So when we got the money, I started with Trello. Trello was free. But then I realized I really needed a solid tool to help me better. How can I say this? It was way better with reporting bugs. Jira was amazing with reporting bugs because you can assign the bug directly to the person. You can track it better. It's a great way for a producer. I've never been a producer on anything. Well, I've been a producer on my radio show, but it's very different when you have a much bigger team and you need to communicate with them. So for us, that was amazing. Jira was amazing. You'll need Google Docs, you need licensing. Zenefits, Google Docs for design documents. This is how we communicated with each other. Google Sheets presentation. Zenefits is to track your team's paid time off, holidays, the contracts themselves, who's a contract, who's a full-time employee, insurance, payroll, everything is there. Also, it helps you track birthdays. You can tell your team happy birthday on their birthday. You can also track anniversaries, how many years they've been with you. It's to me, I recommend Zenefits as well. And of course, all of the other licensing. We also communicate now, especially after COVID, on Zoom. So figure out the tools that you're going to need, because everything will cost you, and you just need to know what's out there and get recommendations from developers, see what they are using. What are my notes here on this one that I not? A sample of things we need to start development. Some cost money, some don't. Most cost money. See what you can do without having to spend your money, and remember, the money you get from the publisher is a loan. So remember that, yeah, it's very important. When your publisher gives you a deal, they say, okay, well, here is $1 million to create your game. They're not giving you free money unless you can sell Winter to Canadians. Most publishing deals, when they give you that type of money ahead, it's a loan. You're going to have to pay it back from your profit. So remember that if you can go buy with free tools go by that until you can't anymore and you need something better. For us, that was the case of Trello versus Jira. When we really needed to, we moved on to Jira. This was, again, from the time we had the game being pitched in the idea concept slash prototype idea concept to prototype. This was the team overview. I want to discuss this a little bit because the team that shipped the game isn't the team that is reflected here. I want to discuss what happened, and I'm going to be careful about what I say because I don't want to speak poorly of anybody. That's why I removed all the names, but I'll tell you this. The team that was hired to make Old World isn't the team that shipped Old World. The team that's set, it's unfortunate. If you know our story, you know why not. But the hiring manager back then hired his friends, people he worked with on Civ. And we ended up with a very toxic team, all male, all white, all Christian. And there weren't any diversity on the team. So don't hire your friends. Some of them might be your friends. Make sure you're hiring the right team for your game. And what I learned, and it's in my case, not to hire from AAA. It doesn't work for us. This is not who we are. Of course, this is for me, it's a hard rule, but I always make exceptions. That's also another thing I learned. I see someone raised a hand. So unless I am told otherwise, should I get to that, or can you please, Ronald, wait till I'm done with the thing, and I promise I have room for questions. Thank you. So back then, this slide mattered to publishers more, and I feel that the whole industry is maturing and caring less about programmers who published big names. So it's not just me. I feel like people have moved on from just hiring people who have shipped a big name. So in our case, the team was there, and we pitched the game accordingly. And by the time we got the money to pitch to produce the game, the team changed significantly. For one, I realized that the team for one, like the art director was me on Old World, but it's not reflected over here because I didn't work on Civ 4 or Civ 5. But the art director here that was hired, we were paying back then to create the game, was the art director on Civ 5 and the lead animator on Civ 4. So what I want to say, and it's very important for you, that we no longer build pitches or care to build a team that have shipped AAA games. Oops. So now comes the heavy lifting. Pre-production still, we're still in pre-production. So for Old World, being the producer, the narrative lead, and art director was great because it was easy. I did not have a producer to argue with. You can argue with your producer. I didn't have a narrative lead to wait on to figure things out for the game, like assets or anything. And I also knew how many assets we will need for each empire and communicated that directly to the artists. And there were so many weeks where I worked 90 hours. I don't recommend it. It's just because I mean, I put pressure on myself, so no one was asking me to have this much to do, but because there was so much to do, I just couldn't go to sleep. My brain was constantly working. If I'm not thinking about the art style, I'm thinking about the narrative design. If I'm not thinking about narrative design, I'm thinking about the assets and production. Yeah, my brain was constantly working. But it is also a very fun phase. you're constantly creating. You know, it's the rush towards getting the game where it's so much to do, so much to start from. The worst thing in games ever is being idle and not knowing what you're gonna do next. So that just kind of kills creativity. For Old World, we had to figure out how many empires, for example. We chose 7. Who will start with as leaders. So these are the people or the leaders that I chose from right to left. That's the leader behind Rome, Romulus, and you have Cyrus the Great from Persia, Philip II from Greece, Hatshepsut of Egypt, Dido of Carthage, Phoenician, and this is Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon and Ashurbanipal of Assyria. That required a whole lot of research. So if you're making a historical game or just know that you're going to pour so many hours into reading and researching if you're not going to hire the team for it. So first we chose the nations: Assyria, Babylonia, Carthage, Egypt, Greece, Persia, Rome, and then I started looking into the skin tone, like just so you know how much research is poured into the game. I started looking at skin tone for the people of the court, even for the leaders. So because we wanted to reflect the genealogy of the time. Here's a slide to tell you, for example, the different references I took to see what Persia looked like. I looked into the history of Persia, who was conquering Persia, what are the bloodlines, did they marry, were they integrating into other cultures, the history of Persia. So I had to learn all of that to take that into consideration. Where did they come from? Where did they used to live? Who migrated to the land around what time? And I started looking into faces and how we wanted people to look like. So this is for the Empire of Persia. This is, for example, the Babylonian references, heavily influenced by Iraq as well. You have to look at who conquered, who was there, who migrated. Did they migrate north? Did they migrate south? Did they look lighter? Where did they come from? How varying the skin tone is. And this is all reflected in the Babylonia. Assyria, heavily influenced by Armenia. All of that is based on research and history and conversations, endless conversations with academia, historians, archaeologists, genealogists, everything, and of course, a ton of reading. And then you take all of that knowledge and you apply it to your art. So these are the portraits of the leaders in game. How can you take it to romantic realism and then also age it? So the road to aging is so much fun in Old World, because we discovered this. First, look at how we were able to just kind of take the facial features and skin tone and reflect the romantic realism there. And the aging, we took a face app, we put the portraits through, and we let the face app age the face. And they did the face app did a great job, and then we just polished around it, and that's how we were aging, reducing a whole lot of time of manually aging the portrait, and helping the artists reduce the time of production in the assets. It's kind of super cool, I tell you. Like the first time we aged a portrait, we were just insanely happy. I'm going to talk about the events, because that's a whole beast. We created an event engine that is so solid that we can sell and license. We can license the engine itself now to other companies who are thinking of creating an event engine for their games. So they can take the engine and build code on it that better suits their what they are, their gameplay. Sorry. While researching history, I realized there are so many beautiful stories in history that are insane. History is insane. You read these stories that you think like, whoa, this actually happened. Actually, yeah, this happened. And while we think that our mind is able to create these insane stories, well, history will show you that you know, the stories that existed in real life are equally colorful and insanely bizarre. In the case of Olga of Kiev, the story talks about how a ruler, Olga of Kiev, married to the ruler, because she was the wife of the ruler at that time, ended up avenging her husband. And they assassinated her husband. One of the tribes of the kingdom assassinated her husband, and they forced her to marry the tribe leader. She asked for time. She just wanted some time to mourn her husband. During that time, she ended up killing their whole tribe, their whole people, thousands and thousands of people gradually and strategically. So what I did with that is take the story, break it into different parts, and mechanize it. I mechanized history and took that to our event editor, and one event led to the other. Of course, you have multiple choices, so not every time you end up with the same result, and that actually makes the game even more fun and unpredictable. But I borrowed my stories from, oops, sorry. I borrowed my story from history, and it's the best inspiration for me. So this is how it translated into a gameplay. You can see here the assassination of a monarch, and you can accept or you don't have to accept their deal. It's up to you. You can change the narrative. In game event, the Olga of Kiev turned into, the hard part for the narrative design is balance, right? And this is where QA comes. But balance, you have to figure out what is the right balance if you are going to accept or deny, because you cannot make them like this, because that will result in people always choosing one option over the other. Well, I was the only writer for a while. It was very important to look for other writers who had different ideas, different voices, different stories to tell. So yeah, I was a narrative lead, but I am limited, right? My knowledge of stories and what I can come up with or what I can borrow from history is limited. I can only create so much. And also I can burn out creating the same thing over and over. At some point you hit a place where you have a writer's block. So today we have, for example, over 3,500 events. And it was very important for me that we hire people from different backgrounds, from who are not just women and from the Middle East. We have people from all parts of the world who contributed to the events in old world, and that only makes it again less predictable, more fun. And you don't have that repetition every time you play the same game. It's not great. So you want to pay for the game, $40 in our case. You want to give the player the ability to play hundreds of hours without playing the same game. So playability was essential to making the decision to hire multiple designers, writers for Old World. We solved it with giving the player the option to choose the frequency in the settings. So if you look at the settings, you can choose the frequency of events as well. You can have normal, more events, less events, because some people don't want to play with a lot of reading. Some people do. They like the story, they like the narrative. We also have a role-playing mode where the event UI won't tell you the results of your choices. So like if you ever get money or you get a gift or you get food or it's going to cost you wood or somebody from the court, you don't see that anymore. So you can just, if you want to play the narrative way, you don't have to worry about the UI. You don't have to worry about all of the economy that's happening in the background. It's more realistic, the role-playing mode, and it is totally up to you. This fits our internal philosophy. Remember, the motto is always, the rule is always that the player should always be having the fun. Again, Bardia is another story. Bardia was this imposter who pretended that he is the son of Cyrus. Some say till today that he was actually the son of Cyrus, and Darius killed him. But I used that story and turned it into a lost relative who is claiming to be the son, claiming to be out of the royal family. This is mechanizing history. I gave a talk on that. Maybe one day I'll give a talk on mechanizing history in a narrative design discipline. So today, what do we have? We have a dynamic narrative, over 3,500 events today, and we're still building. Like, we still have different scenarios, not counting the scenarios, not counting the DLCs, and that resulted in subjects, characters, nations, tribes. So we can choose the engine can pick up based on your age, can pick up based on your traits. The event can be picked up based on the relationship you have with your court members, with your spouse, with your kids, based on your opinion of someone, based on your gender. So we gamified everything about a monarch. We try to gamify everything about anything in the court. And again, loosely coupled prerequisites and dozens of event triggers. Then this happens. So what does that mean to us? And I told you, I'm using Old World heavily because what didn't happen to Old World? So much has happened. So we pitched the game, we got ourselves a publisher. Our relationship with our publisher was amazing. And then a few months later, we realized that Starbreeze is filing for reconstruction to avoid bankruptcy, which is very similar to bankruptcy for us. It only translates into, we're not going to be able to pay your team to make the game. So remember when I said that they give you a chunk of money? They don't just say, here you go, this is your money. They pay it in installments, what they think that you're going to be paying your team every quarter. These payments stopped. That meant that now we are going to have to, it's very hard when your job isn't just the CEO, right? Because the team is losing their head of company, they're losing the producer, they're losing their art director, they're losing their narrative lead because she is going to be on an airplane going to pitch again. So everyone can be paid at the end of the month. Also, she's probably under a whole lot of stress. So that was me for a few months trying to repitch Old World. Back then it was 10 crowns. And I was so sad. I was kind of devastated because we're in the middle of this creative mood. We are going. Everything is just, you know, like going at full speed, full production. And then this happens. And I just did not know. I had no idea. It's so hard to be in a place where you have no friggin' idea what's going to happen next. Because anytime your team member wants to create something, you're always thinking, what if I don't get the money? Maybe we shouldn't create this asset at all. Maybe we shouldn't have 7 empires. Maybe we should just, like, you know, sell the company. I thought these thoughts. The result is epic. So we were able to reach out to people from the Epic Game Store, and we met with them in different conferences. Just every time I go to a conference, I look at it as an opportunity to network, right? So the Epic Game Store snatched us out of the situation, providing the funds we needed to continue making the game and create a better studio culture. Remember when I told you that the team that was making the game was terrible, was toxic? The money that came from Epic allowed us to create the culture that we want by inserting more people that are not toxic, inserting more people that weren't white and men, and people different faiths, different background. Again, what created Old World today is diversity, y'all. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's the different voices that brought different histories. if I think of designers today, I think that Soren might be the only American white designer on the team. Other designers are different parts of the world and a different gender or the background. And I'm very proud of the team we have today. So back to the Epic deal. As a small indie game studio, I relate to all of your stresses. And you might think, oh, wait, you created off a trade company. You have Soren Johnson, you're a big studio, and we're still very small. We still need to pay back the loans that we took for the deals that we made. And we still have, you know, a big dependency on the profits of our games. And our stress list is high. It's not as high as it was when our publisher went bankrupt, but you know, I still have to do all of these things, and if I don't do them, I might lose my studio. So today I am grateful, content, and I'm in a much better place, and good luck to all of you. I'm also here now. Now that we have the funds again, we hired animators, 2D artists, 3D artists, writers, more programmers, more designers. Now we've entered the full production phase, and that lasted a while. And we moved to a new office space. We used to operate out of a garage before then. So we moved to a new office space. That office space cost us a 7-year lease. It's a 7-year lease. And it is it's very expensive. I don't want to even say the number because I'll get depressed. I'll tell you why in a little bit. We were able to buy more Unity seats. We were able to hire an operations manager. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I was the operations manager. So that meant that I had to look at the numbers. I had to make payroll. I have to see what type of insurance we have. I have to keep track of PTO and yeah. So finally I have someone who took that away from me, and I didn't have to worry about it. Someone else did. And I realized that that person was working 16 to 20 hours a week. So can you imagine, while I was doing all of that, I was just working these hours towards operations and HR. So I didn't have to do that anymore. We were able to build a QA department, hire an associate producer, because I needed someone else to start communicating with the team. And the good thing to be very grateful for is I hired an amazing associate producer. I love her so much. She was amazing and still is amazing communicating with the team. It is one of the things that I was most nervous about. I didn't want someone to come in, contaminated the team I was able to create that was happy and positive and wonderful. And I just didn't want anyone to ruin that. And if you hire a producer that isn't communicative and isn't sensitive, they cannot be overly sensitive. They cannot take things personally. Producers have to sometimes sadly absorb the resentment or anger or frustration of the team, sometimes with each other, right? And know how to send it back in a positive way. It's a lot of work for a producer. This is why it's very important. It's your probably most important hire. If it's not yourself, make sure that you hire someone who cares about the team and cares about the company and cares about the product just as much as you do. In my case, I hired that person. She's fantastic. And she was also able to remove things off of my plate so I can pay attention to other things. And of course, you have to make sure you have the funds for license and soundtrack. In our case, that's a lot of money. We worked in the past with Christopher Tin. He's the composer behind Baba Yetu, and it's the first game, and that Soren is the lead designer on that game, Civilization 4. First game to win a Grammy for the music in it, and that is the soundtrack of Civ 4. The first game and the only game so far to win a Grammy. And I'm happily telling you today that as of this year, a few months ago, the Grammys added a whole category for music for video games. So video games music as a category for the Grammys. So for people who are out there who are composers listening to this, There's a new category in the Grammys because your music is being recognized by the whole world as being impactful and a form of and recognizing the video games industry as a form of art. So out of all of this, this is all translating into your costs, right? More costs for us. Licensing, Unity is expensive. For us, our team knows is very proficient with Unity, so we kept developing in Unity, and we are developing in Unity for the next projects. Then COVID happens. Remember that office I was telling you about that we just built out and contracted for 7 years, and we're paying every month about $7,000 for, and we had a gym in, and it's 7,000 plus, not counting utilities. We were so happy with, and we were only 6 months into the lease. We leased it for 7 years because I made the decision around COVID to go fully remote. So now it's sitting up there and we're paying every month for it. And our landlord isn't allowing us out of the contract, even though we decided, we gave them an option to pay the whole thing. Sadly, it is up there. But I think that going fully remote, I know I am ranting about something, and it's, you know, bringing me sadness because it's a lot of money. But at the same time, and I'll say the highlight how going fully remote actually opened the project for us so much, because the upside is that we were able to hire from anywhere in the world, and anywhere in the world meant diversity to the story, not just to the team, diversity to the narrative of Old World. And we have a very strong narrative. So we need someone who comes in with a different viewpoint, someone who can create bizarre, but still relevant and good events for Old World. That going remote allowed us to do that. And of course, going fully remote, my worry was, of course, the health of my employees, and was terrified for the whole entire world. So I pulled the plug. I'm like, you know what? Yes, we're paying leaves, but it's way more important for my team not to worry about coming to work. So again, this helped us expand our talent pool. Let me show you. It translated into this. Diversity and different voices, different perspective lets you see things that you and people you are close to won't be able to see. The 5th of May of 2020, we went on early access. And to us, it is launched, right? Because it doesn't matter. This is when we have not yet shown the game to the public and we decided to. So here's when we go live and become vulnerable. And we were very worried, confident, but worried, mostly worried. Where to look for reviews? Whether you like it or not, people are gonna give their opinions about your game everywhere. Once you see those reviews, how to proceed. Game journalism today is controversial. Some say it is no longer relevant, and some say it is still relevant. To us, it was positive. Game journalism gave us good reviews. It was positive, so we chose to find it relevant. That was a joke, by the way. No, but seriously, game critics like Metacritic is important, right? So you look at Metacritic, it's important to look at the actual numbers of Metacritic and not read too much into the reviews left by users. Really, don't look at those. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Because anyone with an opinion, not having played your game, again, with an opinion, not having played your game, so they like look at your game, they have a thought, it's negative, they haven't played your game, can leave a review. It's gonna be negative. And it happens, and they will. So look at the Metacritic actual numbers. Now, how to read Steam reviews, it's different, right? Because on Steam, people who leave a review, they have to buy the game. It is still debatable how much you should look into this, because most people who leave a review are people who feel negative about your game. So keep that in mind. Keep that most people who are happy and playing your game aren't going to leave a review, right? You go at a restaurant, you like your meal, you are less likely to leave a review than if you go to a restaurant and you have a very bad experience. You're gonna go and leave a bad review. So the voices you're going to hear most of the time are negative. So keep reminding yourself that the negative reviews aren't actually a summary of everyone. They don't reflect the people who are buying your game. Okay, they're just the loud minority. Ask people to leave you a review. If you feel that someone is happy with the game, can you say, please, can you please leave a review? But be careful, you don't want to come across as pushy. So cross your fingers that they will leave also a 10, right? Because nowadays someone can play the game in double digits hours, but still leave you a 7 or an 8. Don't ask me why, it happens all the time. I don't know why they're stingy with their 10s if they're happy with your game. What I'm saying is not out of resentment. We're very lucky with Old World. But remember, water, H2O, has a review on Metacritic, and it's not 100%. Who can have a negative review of water? It's out there. It's insane, but it's out there. So keep that in mind. So again, it's not out of resentment, but more out of realism. I want you to know how to read your numbers. I do not want the numbers to get to you, right? Don't let it be an assessment of your own product. You know your product, right? So for us, 87 is 110, over 100 for us. So we're very, very happy. Again, know how to read your numbers. And we were selling well, right? So we were being reviewed well and we were selling well. Steam is our storefront, right? Remember that, all of you, please. Steam is your storefront. Remember that anytime you put your game on that platform, update your storefront and make sure always that it's consumer friendly, okay? Go from your phone and check on your storefront. Go from your iPad and check on your storefront. Go to your laptop and check on your storefront. See it everywhere, all the time. See how it looks like and update it, okay? Update it. Stay in love with your game. Highlight your crowd points. For us, an extension of selling well was the 2D art as a source of pride. We were picked up by many organizations that highlight history, like Ancient History Encyclopedia, World History Encyclopedia, and all the viewers of the site have access in similar articles to our art, and as an extension, will hear of our game regardless of whether or not they actually play games. Sorry, just a second. So people were raving about our art, were asking us all the time whether they can include it or not. And the British Museum, the same month we went on early access, I got an email from the British Museum. I didn't see that it was from the British Museum because the signature was of a person, and they didn't tell me they were the British Museum. They asked if they can borrow our art and give us credit. I always care about who's using it. It could be a terrible organization. We don't want our art to end up there, and we do not want us giving permission to a terrible organization. And then they responded with, oh, we're the British Museum. We're thinking of adding your painting of the Ishtar Gate to our virtual tour. And I lost my mind. It's like, oh my God, I'm the art director. Of course, I'm gonna say that to myself to remind myself I'm not an imposter. I do it all the time. And I was so happy to know that our painting, our recreation of history visually went to the British Museum and to the Babylonian section of that. So if you're ever there and you go on the virtual tour, it's on the virtual tour. We later found out that the Eternals, a Marvel movie, had almost the same exact approach to the Ishtar Gate, our Ishtar Gate. And I'd like to believe that they were inspired by us. At the end of the day, there aren't many references out there. So we, art directors, have to reconstruct what we think the world looked like back then and ask our artists to interpret that visually. So we'd like to believe that the Eternals of Marvels were inspired by our Ishtar Gate, because it's just exactly the same. And here we are. We are at the end of my presentation. I hope I was beneficial to you. I'm also available to you if you want to send me your pitch, your ideas. I love to help, and you already know that. So I'm going to open up the questions. First of all, I'm going to check with the organizers if everything's well.
Yeah, all good. Thank you so much. This was honestly wonderful and actually very insightful. We really appreciate it. Before we open the floor to questions, would you just like to pitch yourself and like the things people can follow you on, or like the things people should play? Anybody else?
I shared, I think, my first slide. I'm at Leyla Cat J. I'll post it here at Leyla Cat J on Twitter. You can always reach me there. And if you have questions over there after the sessions, anything, you can reach me there. And we'll take it from there.
Cool, thank you. We do have a question from Ronald, so I'll just let him. Is it your fine with him unmuting? Ronald, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for sharing all of this. It was really helpful. Thank you very much. Well, I have a few questions actually. I hope you can answer all of them. The first one is, when we're pitching, do we need to show the team? Do we need to show the names, the pictures of the team, who will be doing what, and telling the investor that these guys have made AAA games or whatever, their track record, I mean?
No, you don't have to share names unless you want to, right? Sometimes, like, for example, like in my case, as you saw, the slide didn't show names, but it showed what they're working on, right? Or what they've worked on. In some cases, you can, because you're basically trying to tell your publisher that we hire Soren Johnson, and Soren Johnson is a big name. Well, one, it provides the publisher with, or your product, it gives your product a little bit more value, that this is a name in the industry that is known for making a great game. But also it tells your publisher that we're going to have to pay him. Like, paying Soren Johnson as a lead designer is different than paying someone else who's starting as a lead designer. So this will help your publisher understand if you have elevated costs or inflated costs or big numbers that you're to establish that, okay, well, they have to pay these people, if that makes sense.
What about if in the middle of the production you decide to change these names? Would it be a problem for the publisher? Let's say you don't go eye to eye with these people, and then you change them, you get another designer, let's say, changing the team. Will this be a problem for the publisher?
Well, keep in mind that the publisher doesn't just give you their money and you go. They pay in installments, that's one, but they also communicate with you. So make sure that in our case, we changed the whole team, right? Like almost the whole team, like 80% of the team. So I sat on a call with the publisher and told them the situation. I told them, look, listen, our hiring manager is sexist, racist, homophobic, and
oh
also.
My God.
I had to. And I told them that I am trying to reconstruct the culture because the hiring manager hired his friends, and we are trying to introduce more diversity. And at that point, when I had this conversation, I got that money, the publisher gave me 2 thumbs up and says, we are backing you 1,000%, go for it.
I'm gonna go through the next questions really fast. The second question is, do we need to show our research if we've done any research? Do we need to show it in the pitch? And no. Do we need to state the replayability of the game if we're planning to add replayability to the game, like for the quests, for other aspects? And I saw that you changed the title of your game. At what point you changed the title, and would it have any impact on the publisher if you changed the name, or did the publisher ask you to change the name?
No, so I'm going to ask you to just ask one one question at
One
a time.
question.
Yeah. So I remember them. Yeah. So
Okay.
let me just start with what you put in your pitch deck. Okay. So first
Okay.
of all, you don't have to put the names, but sometimes you want to. In my case, I don't have to put the names, but I always put Soren Johnson, right? I always put Soren Johnson. Like, hey, remember, Soren Johnson is behind Civ 3, Civ 4. I have to pay Soren Johnson a big, a big salary. And I have the creators of Civ 4 and Civ 5 and developers. I have to pay them. I have to ask for a big number from you, publisher, because I have to pay my team, and my team is a veteran team in the Civ genre. So in some cases, you want to add the names if they're famous. And sometimes you just want to add their experience. They worked on Civ 4, they worked on Civ 5, they worked on Crusader Kings, they worked on the Swarm Mine, they worked on Fortnite. So it's just to kind of establish the experience level of your team, that they are veterans, right? But most times you don't have to. You just can say, I'm gonna need a 2D artist, an animator. You can just like say their job titles, right? Or you can even reduce it to smaller. I'm gonna need a team of 15 developers total. In pre-production, I'm gonna need 3. In production, I'm gonna need 5. So it's really depending on how much more you know, and how much more, even if you know how much more you want to tell. Another thing you asked me was, you have to tell your publisher if your game is playable, right? You have to tell them what are the replayability options, if it's there, because while some people hate the term itself, it determines that it justifies sometimes the cost of your game. So if you say, I'm gonna sell my game for $40, why 40? Because the average player showed that they play about 40 hours total of our game, right? So they're getting $1 per hour. So it just kind of justifies, because you're gonna have to determine with your publisher how much you're gonna sell your game for. I forgot to talk about that in my slides. The publisher is gonna ask you, how much are you planning to sell the game?
Is there a formula? Is there a formula between how much the game should cost and how much time the player can play the game? Is there a specific?
There's a controversial formula, but there is a formula.
Is it possible to have it, or to?
It isn't like this. It's more like of a small session. You need a small session on how to the breakdown of the prices goes. I cannot answer it in a question, but for example, so it's made up of so many things. It's made up of how much it's going to cost you, how long it's going to take you, and how many hours the player is going to play, right?
Okay.
So it also, like, basically the time, the cost, the team size, the duration of development, you factor that in, and how many hours it's going to give the player.
Okay. Well, my last question. I don't know if you can answer it. How much does a soundtrack cost?
Ooh. Really anything. So if you're licensing the music, it can cost $1,000 per track, and $1,000 for the same track per mastering. So $1,000 for the person who originally created the sound, and $1,000 for remastering for the track. And it can cost $200. It can cost somewhere between $200 and $4,000.
Orchestral soundtrack, or just simple
song. So for example, we were licensing Arvo First, or if you want to license Philip Glass, right? They can ask for 2,000 per. So 2,000 per the original and 2,000 for remastering. So it's going to cost you 4,000 for a track.
Okay.
And or you can work on your original tracks, which is also very expensive, depending where the artist is, depending on the fees for them recording, depends on their experience level. I've worked with Christopher Tin on Old World, where we are submitting our soundtrack to the Grammys. I also worked on on original tracks with composers from Beirut, Egypt, Germany. We created a lot of original tracks. We have about 2.5 hours, 3 hours of music that's just original, and we have 8 hours of music that's licensed. So don't talk to us about music. We're not your best reference. Again, we are behind the first game ever to win a Grammy Award. That only tells you how much we care about the music in our game. But it's not every studio, it's not every game. Not a lot of people want to spend this much money on music. And to be extremely, extremely frank with you, that is not how I'm gonna approach our next game. Our next game, I'm going to license a whole lot less music because that took a lot of hours and energy to build that soundtrack for Old World. It took 4 years of research and listening to music everywhere we went, and conversation and recording and different artists, different composers, it's just a lot of work. And neither myself or Soren can have this much time moving forward, especially the way we know where we're headed.
Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing. It's thank you. If I is it possible to send you let's say my my pitch deck so you can check it out at some point?
Yeah, definitely.
Just to give me pointers because I'm looking for a publisher for my game, so it would be amazing if you can help out with this. Thank you, Leyla. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Ronald. We have 2 people raising their hands. We have Shadi and JP. So Shadi, would you like to go? But before we start, Leyla, how much time do you have?
I'm here with you.
Okay, cool. Shadi, all yours.
All right. So my question is basically, I already pitched a game to you, right? Yeah, I did. And this is before I put my game into early access now. And to be completely frank, probably because of like imposter syndrome, whatever, I expected the game to have a lot more negativity and less popularity for not like a game I haven't spent on marketing, because I didn't get a job until recently. Point is, I was wondering if someone like told me the combat in this game is like better than the other games they've played or something. Does that mean that I should push out more combat-oriented games, for example? So like whenever I pitch a publisher later on, I'm like, yeah, I designed the combat of this game and this game as well. This is why, if this game's major focus is combat, this is why you should hire me for this. Or is it okay if I still like branch off to something that's not combat related exactly? Because right now, after that, I showed you the game that I pitched you, and I have another idea now after that to do something very similar but more combat oriented instead of speed and all that stuff. So yeah.
Yes, Hadi. Thank you. Was that Shadi, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah, Shadi, well, yes, of course. I was in Beirut recently, and I was so lucky to meet with so many of you pitching your games. And every time I'm in Beirut, I will always open my calendar to hear your pitches, and if I can help, I will. At least I'll give you feedback. That's the worst I can do. I'll tell you this: where you're gonna go next is something that's heavily related to you. Like if you feel like you have the creative scope in you to continue creating, give this similar content, it's really up to you. So that you can decide the direction of your career, right? How much energy you have based on reviews. Remember, it's the loud minority. What does your instinct tell you? Can you improve on the design you've already created? How so? Can you improve so much that you create a standalone game, or can you improve enough to create a DLC? So this is post-production. You just released your game, it's out there, you're getting feedback. So what I'll say is, the content you are thinking of creating, can it fit under a scenario? Can it fit under a bigger than scenario, a campaign, bigger than a campaign, a DLC? Or can it become a standalone project? So you can determine that. These are just if you want to stay within the similar game. But if you feel like your energy is depleted in that genre, you want to move somewhere else, you want to create something entirely new, it's up to you.
It's not exactly that. The other idea I told you was a game. It's not I already know that if I want to go with this idea, it will be a game. But the point is, with the game I showed you, if I don't get the money for it, I can still do it by myself, like I did this game. Granted, it'll take more time. But with this idea that improves what I have now, either if it's the same idea or a sequel or whatever, it would need more money.
Yeah, hold on.
And I need to get
I misunderstood your question. You said that someone left you, or some people left you reviews, some users left you reviews about...
Some people saw the Discord link on the Steam page. They joined the server, they talked to me, and they're like, combat is nice, whatever. It just feels like you could add more to the game, and I, as one person, cannot add that much more to the game. I made it very clear that it's one-man team. So yeah, with that feedback, I can make a game that will, of course, be better than this one. That's not much to say. But like I said, the idea I gave you, I pitched to you, I can do it by myself even if I don't get the funding. But this idea requires the funding. I cannot do it without the funding. And
are you pitching?
The main issue.
Are you currently pitching your game?
I did not pitch this idea, the new one. No, I just pitched the one I showed you. That's the one about speed and whatever. This idea. This idea.
Crowdfunding.
I've never tried crowdfunding, and I remember that one of the talks was actually with Rami Ismail, and he was like, as soon as you do crowdfunding, you shut yourself off to publishing deals. Not all of them, but there are some publishing deals you shut like yourself off, and I don't really want to burn bridges without having a view of the shore in the first place, you know what I mean? So yeah.
I've never done crowdfunding. I always done publishing. So I don't know if Rami published a game with crowdfunding, but you know, I trust Rami. Rami really gives a lot of good bits of advices here and there, everywhere. So I think. Sorry. So keep pitching, or see if there are other developers in the community, Shadi, who are willing to work with you on developing your game with a deal that if you get a publishing deal, then they'll get shares, or they'll get, you know, the money later, or some people sometimes volunteer to help out here and there. See if you can find that. I wish I had a more to tell you about pitching and crowdfunding and
it's a very weird spot I'm in. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah,
because there's this one game I can do without the funding, like the funding isn't required, but it makes it easier. And this other game that's probably gonna be better than that one, but that one requires the funding. Like it's either funding or nothing. So that is my issue basically.
Well, good luck. I wish I have I'm a better resource to you than just telling you what you already know.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Shadi, for your question. We have JP. JP, can you hear us?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for the talk. It was very insightful, and also everything you do for this community. So I think my question is somewhat related to the end of Shadi's conversation, but I was interested in the hiring process, specifically in terms of like, where do you go to find people, and especially how do you end up building a rapport with people you don't know at all because you have, when you're doing a project, there's this thing where you need to find the right people really quickly, but to know if they're the right people, you kind of have to, I don't know, I guess have experience with them, or what do you look for, you know, and where do you find them also?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Since we got money, my first hire till today, I don't regret hiring the people I hired, including a couple of not so great hires, but I learned a lot, right? I'm always learning. I'm constantly learning to become a better leader of my team, a better CEO, even better narrative lead, better everything. So I don't have the exact formula to get the best hires, but we seem to have the good karma for it, the charisma, the luck. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. It starts with you approaching the hiring process humbly, right? You're not a boss, you're not a lord, you're not a god. People you are talked to have fascinating backgrounds. A lot of them have the knowledge, not just the experience. Some of them have the knowledge and the experience, and they're wonderful creators. And you just want to see whether whatever they can create, whatever they're capable of, is something that in the interview process you are able to know. So, and also you have to have a good sense of people. You know, some people say, oh, I can tell people like this, but you have to approach the interview process thinking that you're not looking for anything wrong with something they said, right? Just so you can build your whole interview around it. Most people who approach the interview are nervous. They're probably going to say something silly, or they're going to be showing signs of nervousness. So you have to take that into consideration. Again, approach the interview humbly. Don't be waiting on the edge of your seat thinking, oh, their English isn't good enough. Because many people who have English as a second language, who read and have the knowledge, and in the industry, writers write better than they speak. And they are more critical of their usage of grammar and vocabulary than a native speaker. That's from experience in my game. So, so the first thing is approach it humbly. Don't be waiting at the edge of their seat for them saying something that's most of the time coming out of them being nervous. Approach the interview knowing that they're nervous. There's going to be 5 to 10 minutes of burn time. To start the interview process with enough time for them to relax into the interview. Tell them as much as you can ahead of the interview. Let them prepare. Don't say, oh, well, they prepared for this interview, they don't count. No, it's actually, it counts. I hired one of my designers because I gave the same task to all of the interviewers, and she went and created an event and added it as a mod to the game. So she researched, she knows my game, and she proved to me that she knows my game. So I hired her, and since I hired her, it's amazing. It's an amazing find. So let your interviewer know who's going to be on the interview. Who are you? Even if you think, oh, they know who Soren Johnson is, tell them who Soren Johnson is. Tell them he's going to be on the call. Tell them to send you enough information. What I usually, the rule of thumb that I go with is that if they don't attach a resume, I'm not going to ask them for one. So people just apply sometimes and they don't even attach a resume. It's like, hey, I'm interested in your job. This is my number. This is my email. I've worked on the game, blank, blank, blank. I don't even contact. They don't have the energy and the effort to care about the interview that might get them a job. How will you ever get them motivated to work on a project that sometimes demands someone to be creative, demands someone to make that extra step? Sometimes they don't have to, but sometimes it might require that. And then you have to talk to them. If they are rigid, they're nervous. If they are silly, they're nervous. But if they say something continuously about what if people misunderstand me? What if I am read in the wrong way? What you have to ask them, I'm sorry, did you have an experience with that? So try to read into what they're saying, not too much. Keep in mind they're nervous, but try to read into what they are saying. And don't just talk to them about work, talk to them about your culture, talk to about them about the traits you like in a team, talk to them about how you like your culture to be, what kind of culture they like to work in, what are their experiences, have they ever been in an argument with a fellow colleague, have they ever been fired from a job? Don't ask them uncomfortable questions. You are not there to pry. You're not there to find out about their love life. You're not even there to find out about their family life. You know, don't make it uncomfortable for them. But ask all the relevant questions that respond to your needs, right? Because you are responsible to create a safe environment for them to work in, a clean environment, a not just from hygienic point of view, because they might not physically be there, but you are responsible creating an environment for them that they can create your product in. So in order for you to do this, you have to not contaminate what you already have by hiring a bad hire.
And regarding where you usually go to look for people.
Everywhere. I post on Twitter. I go work with indies. I post on Swana Awards. I put it in my Discord channel. When I send it out everywhere. And I create a layer of filters. So they have to attach a resume, and then they have to answer some questions. And if it's not all applied, it's basically your filter, right? So if they don't respond to the questions, then you already have a filter system. Like, what is a hard line for you? They have to answer this question. If it's not answered, you go to the next one. You go to the next application. So I post it everywhere. I like work with indies because I know they are the people in charge over there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. For art, I go to ArtStation. I spend a whole lot of time looking at portfolios on ArtStation. For artists here, make sure you have one.
Amazing. Thank you, JP. Thank you so much, Leyla.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I also have a question. We've talked with a few publishers, and I feel like a lot of it, sometimes we have like an answer about like how, oh, the fact that we're a small team from Lebanon talking about a project that's kind of talking about our lived experience would be like a great thing for marketing and everything. But how do you find a balance between, like, you know, because obviously you're going to want to use this for marketing, but also finding something that works with your game and like isn't just, oh, look, it's a team from Lebanon. You know, does that make sense?
I know what you mean. I think you might want to research, Sasha, because I have to tell you, I'm quite impressed by your project.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. And the way I would do it, again, this is the way I would do it, not necessarily you. And I want some time also to live with that question so I can give you a better answer, because you definitely deserve one. I would look into thematic games that were created for their theme, right? For their message. There are so many out there, by the way. And some of them won awards, and there are actually categories for games with a message. And I would show their sale. I would their sales. I would also point out reviews, significant reviews in game journalism about the theme itself, and pull those out. You know, take a screenshot, cut it, and just edit it, and put it in a slideshow for your publisher, telling them that, look, listen, games make good games, games with message. Here are their reviews. This is how they were received by the audience. This is the type of support they got, and we're thinking of creating something thematically closer or close to these games. And I would add these in pitches. I would reflect that in pitches. The question is to you right now, would you buy a game that has a message?
Of course, of course. I'm just more worried about like the fact that like our origins becoming more of a marketing thing for a publisher, whereas our message kind of gets drowned out. But I completely agree. Like I love games with a message, which is why we're trying to do it.
So you have to see if your publisher does, right? And if they don't know, they're on the edge. It's actually not a bad thing because you want to sway them your way. So you want to convince them that translates into numbers. Publishers are business people. Publishers are business people. They want to see that being reflected on the screen in numbers. And you have to pull from, this is in research, you have to pull from games that carry messages that way and show it to them. Remember, they don't know games. Come to the meeting knowing that your publisher knows 0 games you're referencing. So you want to tell them, here is the game made by, here's the game called, I'm gonna make game, just pretend game. This is Beirut, the game. Beirut sold $3 million. It's a game about the war in Beirut, about pooling resources in time of war, about scavenging, and it was created by a team of developers from Beirut. And this is the numbers it generated. These are the reviews it received. This is from the gamesindustry.com website. This is from Kotaku. This is from Blank. And these are reviews by Metacritic. These are reviews on their storefront, and pull out and then do it for another game and another game. And highlight your message. What are you trying to do and how you are reflecting that in your game. So they're gonna say, okay, wonderful. These are the games that they made. This is their message. How strongly are you showing that in your game? And then you have to show in your presentation, this is how we are translating a game about war. This is how we are translating a game about heritage. This is how we are translating a game about history. This is how we're translating a game about Phoenicians. So you just have to highlight how you're going to show that and how the gameplay is going to be around that message.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll take all of that into account. If there aren't any more questions, Ashraf, I'll leave it to you.
Sure. Okay. I will give anybody who might have questions 20 more seconds to type in the chat if they would like. And until then, Leyla, thank you so much for today's session and for organizing, the sessions in Beirut and the session with Soren. Is Soren still here? Hi, Soren. And yeah, so cool. So yeah, thank you so much for this. This was honestly wonderful. It was very insightful for me and for everybody else, I'm sure. And yeah, do you have something to say? I feel like you might have something to add.
No, but you know very well that I'm always here to help. Especially, I know how Lebanon is impacted and affected, and how much Lebanon is suffering. I'll always give you time. I'll always give you whatever resource I can give. So if I haven't covered something here for you guys, please reach out to me. If you don't know how, just go to @LeylaCatJ. I'd like to help the industry as much as possible. My love is always indie. So I'll always help indie as much as I can. If I don't know how, I'll just tell you. But otherwise, I hope I was helpful to you today. I hope I gave you something that's worthy. And if I ever can help again, please contact me on Twitter @LeylaCatJ. And I'll see how I can help you more there. Every time I go to Beirut, just know I'm going to give a whole day where I can spend with Lebanese developers to see how I can help best. All the love to you guys. You are warriors. What you are doing with no internet, what you are doing with no electricity, what you are doing in a devastated country with a devastated economy and still having that vibe is just mind-blowing. You rise up from the ashes every day. This is something an average American won't have to do over a lifetime ever. And you do it every single day. Eternal love to you. I love you so much. And I'll help every single way I can.
You have no idea how much we appreciate this, Anjad. Thank you so much. It truly warms our heart to see, people are actually willing to help and, doing that. So Anjad, thank you so much. People like you are what keeps us going. Yeah, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful note to end the Gaming Academy on. So thank you so much for this session, and thank you for everybody that attended and will attend through YouTube. And yeah, take care, you guys. See ya.